Round number 3, Rochester Masters Invitational. I'm playing a master, Nels Truelson, multiple time South Dakota State champion, former Minnesota State champion, and former teammate of mine in the Twin Cities Chess League. So I started out pawn to d4. Nels plays knight to f6, and here I played knight to f3. I had 1.5 out of 2 in the event. There was a 3-way tie for first. The other 2 players with 1.5 were playing each other. And here I wanted again to play solid, so similar to the round 1 game against Tim. I'm not real sharp on my openings currently. I haven't been practicing them a lot and reviewing things. So again, I wanted to play solid with the white pieces. After d5, I played c4. So this is either going to go into like a Queen's Gambit declined or a Slav, and Nels chose the Slav. And here I played e3. This is called the slow Slav. I just felt this was the most solid. Nels plays g6. When I see g6 in the Slav, usually what I'm thinking is eventually I would like a Slav Exchange position, because my feeling is that bishop on g7 is actually a bit misplaced, running into this pawn on d4, and the only way that black can really make that bishop come back to life is if they can get this pawn to e5 break-in. So when I see g6, that's kind of my idea. I would like to trade on d5, get that exchange Slav structure, and then play very quickly on the queen side. So here I start with knight to c3, bishop g7, and I'm thinking that black wants to take on c4 at some point, play knight d7, castle, and get e5 in soon. So here I played kind of a strange move order. I don't honestly think it was best. I think bishop e2 and castling is the way to go. I played bishop to d2. And what I'm doing here is I'm waiting for d takes c so that I can take back with the bishop in one turn instead of moving the bishop and then taking back later. But again, I don't think this was best. I think bishop e2 is the way to go. So after castle, I played rook to c1, kind of keeping that same plan. I know the rook is going to be on c1 eventually with this idea of c takes d, c takes d. So here Nels plays pawn to b6. And my first thought was, kind of going back to that round 1 game idea, Nels probably wants bishop to a6, trading off this bad bishop, which is the same color as the center pawns, for my good bishop, which is the opposite color of my center pawns. So that's what I'm thinking here. That bishop trade is about to happen, leaving me with the bad bishop on d2. So here what I did was I decided to take. C takes d was an option, and I think it might have been slightly stronger than knight takes, but they're very similar. Knight takes was played. I traded again, and here I played bishop to e2. And my thinking was, if bishop to a6 is played, I can take on a6, knight takes, and queen a4, gaining a tempo on this knight. And when the knight retreats, I can castle and get this quick play on the c-file with that bishop probably coming out to b4. So I think this real quick play on the c-file gives me something to play for in terms of trying to get an advantage with the white pieces. So back here I play bishop e2. Nels plays bishop to b7. So you can see both of these bishops are set up very dynamically on long diagonals, whereas my bishops are kind of sitting back here passively on the second rank for now. That's something I need to think about going forward. How can I make my bishops stronger? And how can I control those black bishops so that the center doesn't open up and all of a sudden they're on really good diagonals? So I castle, knight d7. Now here this took a lot of calculation, but I was constantly looking at how can I apply the most pressure to black, because I know if black just gets 1 or 2 moves to develop, all of a sudden the game is equal and those bishops may come to life for black. So after doing some calculation, I thought queen to c2 looked like the most active plan, and the idea here is to sink the queen into c7. And if the queen takes, then my rook comes in, double attacking these pieces, other rook can follow. So that's what I'm trying to do. And after rook to c8, I had this calculated that queen to a4 was a nice way to apply extra pressure. I'm threatening to win this pawn, hitting the knight, and I'm also trying to control the c-file. So if rook takes c1, my other rook comes back to the c-file. So here black plays pawn to a5, defending the a pawn. I swap off rooks, and here I was thinking queen takes might be played, and my plan was rook to c1, and now the queen has to keep this knight defended with a move like queen to d8. And here my plan was pawn to b4, trying to bring this bishop into the game, pointing this way. And then this bishop will probably come to b5, hitting the knight. So I felt like I got a lot of play here by trading off or offering this trade of pawn on b4 for the pawn on a5. So Nels plays bishop takes c8, and again I go with this idea b4. I need to get this bad bishop into the game, and it's going to happen through b4. And I like this move a lot because I'm immediately threatening to win this pawn on a5. So that would be a free pawn, and both of my bishops point queenside with this a pawn ready to run up the board. So after b4, my opponent took, and I played bishop takes b4, pinning the e7 pawn to the rook. Rook to e8 was played, and now I see this idea e5 is coming, so I had to start calculating again. And I calculated that bishop to b5 was a way to prevent this e5 push, so that's what I went for. The idea here is I'm going to bring the rook in next, rook to c1, and black is really tied down with that knight pinned to the rook. The strongest move according to Stockfish is e5. That's what Nels plays. I play d takes e. This knight is still pinned. Knight takes e5 is interesting, sacking the exchange, because it does double my pawns. But I thought after this it still looked safe enough for me. Bishop h3. I see Stockfish is saying bishop takes f7 check. King to h... No, it's a little bit tricky. Maybe pawn to f4. I don't remember what I was thinking during the game. I need to stop queen g5 and mate. Pawn to f4 might have been what I was thinking, but I remember calculating quite a bit of lines in this position. In the game, Nels played bishop takes e5, and I could take here. Knight takes, and then rook takes back. But my feeling here is, black has a little bit of play. The knight's ready to move. This is definitely winning for white, but I gotta keep an eye on the king side. So instead I played rook to d1, and I was really happy with this move during the game because this rook is ready to capture on d5, and I don't see a good move for black. Then my knight on f3 is still sitting here comfortably defending the king side. So I like to think of some of these positions in terms of risk-reward, and I think that knight is doing a great job keeping the position low risk, right? So I have an advantage. I want to limit black's counterplay while pushing to increase my advantage. That's what I'm doing here by keeping this knight on f3, helping to defend the king side. So here, let's say bishop g7 was played, rook takes d5, and black is still very tied down without any counterplay, and I'm up the clean pawn with the bishop pair and a lot of pressure on black's position. So in the game after rook to d1, Nels actually resigned right here, which I think was a little earlier than I expected, but I also understand why. End of a long day. We played 3 rounds in the same day, and some of those games were up to 3 hours. So, I mean, I understand why. It's not a fun position for black, and Stockfish says it is like a 7-point advantage for white already. It's just kind of a matter of how will things shake out in the next few moves. And yeah, Nels decided to resign here. So I think my big takeaway was the opening. I don't think this was the best idea, the bishop d2, rook c1. With best play, I think this is giving away white's advantage. I probably should have done bishop to e2 and quickly castled kingside. And then maybe later on I'd still do the c takes d plan. But this bishop could potentially come out this way, and I think that's actually better. Like maybe I should have played b3 and brought the bishop out through the queen side to a3, taking advantage of the fact that there's no bishop on this diagonal. So that's my takeaway from round 3. I won this game and ended up with 2.5 out of 3, and the other 2 players that had 1.5 out of 3 drew. So I ended up getting clear first. And I was very excited about that event because really I haven't been testing myself against masters very much lately over the board, and I really wanted to have a good showing just for my own chess confidence. I didn't feel that confident going into this tournament. I thought maybe 1 point or 1.5 I would be happy with. So being able to score 2.5 and win first place, I was very happy about that. And a huge thanks to the tournament director, Dennis. He set this whole thing up. We had an anonymous donor donate the prize fund, And also a huge thanks to all the players that traveled all the way to Rochester to play. So for most of these players, it was somewhere between an hour and a 2-hour drive to get to Rochester for a one-day event. So huge thanks to Dennis, tournament director, and a big thanks to all the players that traveled. It was a really fun event. Everyone was very positive. We did a lot of game analysis, got free pizza for lunch, and yeah, hopefully we do another one soon. I think everyone was interested in playing another Masters Invitational. So that concludes this tournament. Hope you guys enjoyed these recaps, and I will see you in the next video.